Nice and toasty next week across much of the middle portion of the U.S. It's going to be a very rainy pattern west. And where's all the cold across the east? Well, relatively speaking, compared to where we've been, certainly a lot colder, but the pattern just wants to be warm. We just can't get into a super cold pattern. We have seen the last couple systems drop at least some snow across the northeast, but hardly anything. Great Lakes, upper Midwest. Great, yeah, it's just been northern plains, hardly anything, plenty across the west. It's been a pretty active pattern. There's been enough cold air to where there's significant snow of feet into the higher terrain across the west. We're going to get into a little bit more of an active pattern, not a ton. These are waves of energy aloft in the atmosphere, little bits of rotation swinging through that will allow for a few troughs to develop here on your Snowplow News and Norcast weather video. You can see that we have a few little waves, but overall nothing crazy over the next week or so for this time of year outside of just a few localized areas that we'll talk about here. We start things off though with a nice robust system that kicked out of the northwest. It's going to have a band of moderate to heavy snowfall over a 4 to 6 hour period, moving across Michigan into Ontario and then Quebec. Not much in the way of lake effect back behind it because high pressure quickly moves through, but there will be a nice swath of snow. And then we see another system develop. That is going to be part of our brief active pattern Friday into Saturday with colder air. We could see some snow into the Ohio Valley, maybe in towards the mid-Atlantic and maybe northeast as well, with not too much in the way of lake effect back behind it because once again, dry air will be moving on in. And besides a system across portions of Florida and the Gulf Coast and in towards portions of the west over the next few to several days, it's going to be a very quiet pattern. There's the activity bombarding portions of California and other areas in the west coast. But yeah, not much going on elsewhere early to middle portions of next week as we kind of go into these brief active stretches, but nothing too crazy. Yeah, with this one wave of snow that we talked about, a general 2 to 4, but isolated amounts higher than that. And then you can certainly see some more impressive numbers out across portions of southeastern Canada. The wave on Friday into Saturday could bring 1 to 3 inches. If things line up with the jet streams, it could be more. We'll keep an eye on that. And then going into the west, it's really more of the same, where you get some pretty big amounts of high elevation snowfall. The Sierra Nevadas and the Cascades are going to get rocked with some very large amounts of plowable snow with heavy rain again into the lower elevations due to this atmospheric river returning. We certainly don't need it. Let's take a look at how wet of a pattern it's going to be. Very wet into California. It'll be pretty dry across the middle portion of the country as we go throughout the next week to about 10 days or so. Not much in the way of precipitation for most, except again, Gulf Coast into Florida area. That will come in the first half of this period. And then, yeah, just a lot of moisture. Talking another half a foot of rainfall. Big deal stuff. And then, of course, that's where you get your heavy snow up against the mountains. LA, another few inches, not needed at all. We get into these periods of colder weather. Friday into Saturday will be a nice cold batch. Polar vortex rotates around at times, tries to come down, but the cold air source is just not that impressive, and we have plenty of warm air that's going to push into the middle portion of the country. We get these quick shots of colder air over the next 10 days or so. But that's about it. I mean, this is not a super cold pattern. It goes back up to the north at times, and it's just chilly at best going in towards portions of next week. Not super active, no big snowstorms likely.
This is your Norcast weather update.